The moment Gavin Newsom walked into the old stone hall, the air shifted. It wasn't just the whine of the wind threading through the eaves of the ancient Virginia estate, or the crackle of the fire fighting back the autumn chill. It was something heavier, a tension so thick it pressed on the lungs. You could smell wood smoke and old leather, hear the low hum of voices trailing off as people turned to look. He walked in like a man used to cameras, his coat sharp, his smile polished, but even under that gleam, something faltered in his eyes. Maybe he already knew he'd made a mistake. John Kennedy was already seated at the far end of the room, back straight, hands folded, calm as a lake before a storm. He wasn't flashy, no camera team, no entourage, just a worn navy blazer and a quiet look that made you feel like he saw more than you wanted him to. A small scar cut through the corner of his left eyebrow, the kind earned not by accident but by decision. People said he was the kind of man who listened with his whole soul, and when he finally spoke, you remembered every word. Gavin, for all his ambition and rhetorical flair, hadn't come to listen. It had started 3 weeks earlier with a debate invitation, one he couldn't resist. On paper, it looked like a win. John Kennedy, U.S. Senator from Louisiana, a man known for quoting Faulkner in budget hearings and dropping country aphorisms like seeds at a Sunday sermon, was, in Gavin's view, a relic. Newsom was rising, West Coast polish, national profile, presidential whispers circling like vultures over every room he entered. His advisors told him it was a softball, a chance to contrast modern with antiquated, blue with red, reason with rhetoric. He accepted before they'd even finished the briefing, but he didn't know the full weight of the man he was walking into the ring with. John Kennedy wasn't flashy, but he was sharp. Born in Centerville, Mississippi, raised with dirt under his nails and books in his hands, he was a man carved out of contradictions. His father was a farmer, his mother a schoolteacher. He'd gone to Vanderbilt, then Oxford, came back speaking like home but thinking like the world. And while he had a slow drawl that made coastal pundits roll their eyes, his words were flint. That night in Virginia was supposed to be a private round table, no press, just 10 donors, 2 politicians, and a single subject, the soul of America. But someone leaked it. Cameras weren't visible, but they were there, hidden in corners, blinking like watching eyes. The moderator, a gray-haired philanthropist named Ruth Alden, started gently, inviting thoughts on division and unity. Gavin leaned forward, smile bright, voice warm. "You see," he said, "the future belongs to those who can imagine it. We can't look back and romanticize some sepia-toned version of America that never really existed." A few nods. Polite applause. He went on about climate leadership, tech innovation, equity initiatives, his usual symphony. But Kennedy watched in silence, fingers tapping the oak table. Then Ruth turned to him. "Senator Kennedy." He cleared his throat. "Ma'am," he said, "I'd love to imagine the future, but my people are still trying to survive the present. There's a grandmother in Calcasieu Parish who lost her home in a hurricane 3 times in 5 years. She don't care about nets, zero emissions in 2050. She wants her roof not to fly off next month." The room shifted again. And that's when Gavin tried to outsmart him. He smiled, just slightly, and leaned in. "Senator, respectfully, that's the kind of thinking that keeps us stuck. We can't prioritize short-term bandages over long-term solutions. 6 seconds later, he would regret it." Kennedy's eyes narrowed, not in anger but focus. He tilted his head slightly, like a man about to tell a story that mattered. "You ever been in a trailer home during a Category 4 Governor?" he asked softly. "You ever held a child while the walls shook like paper? You talk about long-term solutions, and I agree. God knows we need 'em. But you walk into my people's lives talking about 30-year plans. Without offering help for tomorrow, they'll tune you out before you finish your speech." He let that hang. Then he said, "My daddy told me something once. Said a man who can't fix a leaky roof while planning to build a mansion ain't fit to own either. I don't think you're a bad man, Governor. I just think you ain't listened enough." Silence, the kind that humbles, that was the turning point. Cameras or not, everyone in that room felt it. Gavin's confidence wavered not just from the words, but from the realization that he'd misunderstood the whole battlefield. This wasn't about data points or narrative arcs. It was about asterisk people, asterisk, and John Kennedy knew them, lived among them, loved them, but the story didn't end there. Outside that room, a battle was brewing, one not just of politics but of identity. Gavin had a brother, Tyler, who had grown up in his shadow. A paramedic in rural Nevada, Tyler had spent his life quietly, without spotlight, patching up addicts, delivering babies, pulling wrecks from canyons. They hadn't spoken in months, not since Gavin declined to support a rural health care bill that Tyler had begged him to back. Their father had died of a stroke in a clinic that lacked the equipment to save him. Tyler never forgave Gavin for choosing politics over people that day. At the same time, Kennedy was carrying his own ghost. His wife, Marla, had passed 2 years earlier breast cancer. In his speeches, he never mentioned her, but in every vote he made for patient protections, she was in the room. The day she died, he'd promised her he'd fight like hell to make sure no woman in his state died waiting for care she couldn't afford. That night in Virginia wasn't about winning a debate. It was about honoring ghosts. After the round table, as the guests filtered out, Gavin approached Kennedy. "No cameras now, no crowd, Senator," he said quietly. "I was wrong." Kennedy looked at him, then slowly nodded. "Takes guts to say that. I haven't been back home in a while," Gavin admitted. "I've got a brother who's probably ready to knock me in the teeth." Kennedy chuckled. "Then go let him. Might be the best thing that happens to you all year." Gavin did go. He showed up on Tyler's porch 3 days later with a six-pack and a story. They didn't hug right away. Tyler didn't even open the screen door at first. But eventually, they sat on the porch and watched the sun drop behind the desert hills, not saying much. And when Gavin really asked about the people Tyler served, he listened. For the first time in a long time, he listened. Meanwhile, Kennedy returned to Baton Rouge and visited a small clinic bearing Marla's name. He didn't speak that day. Just sat in the waiting room, holding hands with a woman waiting for test results, her toddler asleep in her lap. Sometimes presence is louder than speeches. 6 months later, something strange happened. Gavin introduced a bipartisan rural health bill in California based on a Louisiana model. Tyler helped write it. Kennedy crossed the aisle to support a clean energy grant, inspired by a meeting he'd had with Gavin's team. The media spun it as odd bedfellows, but those close to the story knew it wasn't politics. It was grief. It was redemption. It was two men learning that leadership isn't about sounding smart. It's about being true. And the lesson: you can memorize policy, you can master spin, but when you step into a room thinking you're the smartest man there, you've already lost the chance to be the wisest. It took Gavin Newsom 6 seconds to realize that. Just 6 seconds, and a man named John Kennedy to remind him. Because sometimes the most powerful words in a room aren't the ones said loudest, but the ones spoken from the heart. And those you never forget.